What's up, guys? Welcome to Junior Crew Students. What?
It's not Junior Crew, it's TK.
Oh, crap. I totally
And you were
forgot.
supposed to go, what's up?
TK Crew student.
We had TK Crew Students yesterday, so just... What's up?
Sound is
What's up?
so much better. So hopefully the audio sounds a whole lot better this week. It's kind of been a frustrating start. Thanks for joining us. It's like 8:55 right now. We've been trying to figure it out. We thought we had it figured out, but
We didn't.
Jeremy diagnosed our problem for us, thankfully.
Maybe.
Was able to tell us that there's a thing with how many input things. I don't know the technical words, but apparently an Xbox controller would do the same thing.
Too many connections.
It's the stripes.
The stripes.
Stripes.
All about the stripes.
TRS.
Well, you know the stripes.
Yeah, the straps.
You know what I mean?
Word.
Word.
It's because of Apple.
So who's still out there with us? Talk to us.
Whatever we got. This week we're kind of talking about a little bit about social media. What else were we talking about, Lee? You posted something. I can't remember what you
Did
posted.
you guys see Austin's comment?
What did
No, you cannot keep your nickname.
He's trying
Nugget.
to keep his nugget.
Listen, we haven't been to not McDonald's. Like the reason why you should not have ordered nuggets at a freaking Mexican restaurant in the first place, but he did. It was not Chick-fil-A. This was not.
He said he went back to the Mexican restaurant and ordered nuggets again.
Well, he didn't do it with us.
He's no longer worthy of the name Nugget.
No longer worthy.
Only Austin Wrecking Ball Kearns.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Wrecking Ball.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So anyways, tonight's talk is mainly towards the way that social media is used to over-exemplify things.
That's one way to phrase it. Yeah. Well, we kind of talked about, like, when we were preparing for this one, there's a lot of surprises that went in tonight. So, like, tonight, we had the technical stuff, so we got started about 30 minutes late. We got that, but we had people joining us, posting new stories, get people in here for sure. And we also we are blessed with the presence of Jeremy Noack Jr., for sure.
Yes, sir.
Stepping in to help us after we had a few people back out on us for different reasons. Bogey just joined in, Jared Brado, great to see you guys. And so we've been hit with a lot of different stuff tonight. We had two females that were going to be joining us, two young ladies who are going to be helping us with this topic of kind of the hyper-sexuality of today's culture. So just kind of, I feel like I'm talking to you guys there because that's the camera, but we're talking to each other too. So there's a lot of different things going on. But that's kind of the thing, is just that in our culture right now, there seems to be this kind of, again, the phrase I guess we're using is hypersexuality. So it seems like sex is all over the place. It's in everything that we're doing. I mean, you guys mentioned social media. It's definitely all over your social medias. I mean, whether or not it's Instagram, it's Snapchat, it's TikTok. I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. When you start to think about your life, it's kind of just everywhere. I mean, what's coming to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have a feeling that a lot of people watch the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh, yeah.
And that in itself can be
For sure.
kind of seen as a...
And Facebook went crazy that night. Okay, and actually, I remember we had our crew Super Bowl
The Facebook
parties.
memes.
I was over there at the freshman house for our crew student ministry, and it was kind of awkward. Actually, we had like 10 freshmen in there, half of them boys, and we're sitting there watching this halftime show, and like they're all looking at me. Like, kind of the funniest comment that came from it is one of them looked up and goes, "What would Jesus do?" I was like, yeah, there's just a whole lot of stuff going on. Like, and there's a lot of different pieces at play when you think about it too. But it was interesting because Facebook was kind of in an uproar about it with J-Lo and Shakira. But what's kind of fascinating to me is that that's our culture. Like, that is everywhere. And I don't necessarily think we get in an uproar as much as we did with the Super Bowl about it all the time.
Right. I thought that it was kind of interesting, though, that especially for like last year's Super Bowl performance with Adam Levine, there wasn't as much of a outrage about what was happening. You know, I felt like for some reason it was more, talked about this year, and I don't know if that necessarily had to do with the fact that, whatever, if they were women or whatever, but there was some reason behind that.
Yeah.
I can't really figure out.
We got some folks joining in right now. We got Ismael Lopez.
Yeah.
We've got Lexi Eddings, Lauren McLean is joining. We're kind of talking about hypersexuality in today's culture, looking at the Super Bowl and seeing kind of how the reaction went to that was kind of crazy, which to me, honestly, here's where I was. I was sitting here going, it's Shakira and Jennifer Lopez. Like, what did you expect was going to happen at, Hips Don't Lie is one of the biggest songs that came out of it. So the piece of me is going, what did we expect? You're in Miami, so of course you're going to be able to pick two incredible Latin American talent, vocalist, performers. Great folks who've done really well. I mean, I remember I was in a high school mission trip, actually, Honduras, my first mission trip I ever went on. And I remember being down in Honduras. I think we were at a Burger King down there, and it was Shakira all over the place, because of how much her popularity meant to the Latin American community and things like that. So, when I think about this, it is very much a kind of what did we expect? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't expect anything less from them too, for sure.
But it is. Why do you feel like people got very? I mean, you guys were watching it. Did y'all feel uncomfortable watching it in a group of people at a church function? The
majority of people who got really uncomfortable with it, though, is the older generation.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Or your parent. For us, it'd be our parents more. That I guess that 40-year-old generation type deal.
Yeah.
Or it's probably more their age group. Like Jennifer Lopez, she's I think 50 or something like that, and they're your age, and they're personally, they probably could never see themselves doing that, but you have these people up there doing it, and it's just probably makes them feel a little uncomfortable or something.
It was really interesting watching the difference between the boys in the room and the girls in the room too. The boys got uncomfortable enough in the room that they left. I'm not kidding you. They were I really don't know how to handle this. They're on poles, things like that. And so they left the room. The girls were sitting there watching every single minute of it. And their eyes were kind of glued to the TV about it.
I started dancing whenever I saw them start doing the hips don't lie. I started shaking my hips. I was ready to go.
Yeah. Did you really? Did you start dancing?
Yes, I started dancing. Nugget's got a video of it, bro.
Well, speaking of Nugget said that he felt uncomfortable that she had her daughter with her on stage.
That there's a buttload of little kids up there on stage. So it's you're kind of doing that. I don't know. Maybe it's just they're comfortable with how they are or something, but I don't know. They're showing off a lot in front of a lot younger eyes.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I actually remember a few years ago, and when I say a few, it could be 6 years ago. I don't even remember, but I remember Beyonce was in a similar situation. And guys, Nugget, give me a heads up. My phone is saying that we're delaying a whole lot, but if you guys are hearing us, just give us the thumbs up to make sure we're good. Chelsea Bryce, welcome. Thanks for joining. And we're talking about hypersexuality and culture. We're talking about how this kind of became a thing, or we wanted to talk about this because of the Super Bowl commercial, particularly things like that. Brado gave us the thumbs up. We're good to go. So what were you just talking about? You had me on something. Oh, with the daughter. So yeah. Beyonce. There was something like this. There was a really interesting tribute to Beyonce. Beyonce was doing a whole lot of things, but Beyonce has songs like Bootylicious, and there's a few other ones, and it's kind of she's doing this, but then she switches gears, and it's a song to her daughter who's sitting in the front row. And I kind of had the same feelings of okay, should I feel uncomfortable right now because daughter's in the front row, right? And then there's this other side of culture right now that says, no, express it. Let's express things. Mm-hmm. It's their bodies, things like that. What are you guys hearing on that side of culture?
Yeah, I feel like it's trying to be very normalized in a sense.
Yeah, they're trying to make it seem like there's nothing wrong with it, which is kind of people's view of our culture is changing from a lot from that boomer generation to, I guess, I don't know what generation is that
Xers,
after,
and then millennials.
Yeah, your guys, and then millennials and all that.
I'm a millennial.
No, you're not. You're a boomer, but it's okay.
Z, I'm a millennial.
I'm not a Z.
A boomer had parents that fought in World War II.
Yeah, that's you.
No.
So, anyways, it changes from each thing. This just so happens to be the change is kind of happening with our generation type deal.
Here's the question for all you guys listening in too. Do you feel like this is a generational difference? Do you feel because again, Austin's Gen Z, and Austin was going comfortable with things. So that's the thing, is it might seem like there's this normalization piece that's going on. But I don't know. I don't know if it's limited to a generation as much as it is so many other different things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Aiden Childers is joining us back.
He's getting a pop filter. Felt
Welcome
like
back.
his S's were a little too hard.
Yeah, give us your feedback on this, guys, because I think it's something to be talked about. I mean, for instance, like back in the late 1990s, and there was the whole Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton scandal. Like, y'all weren't even alive, right? I'm talking about before you were born.
2001, bro. I was alive.
Yeah, exactly. I did not have sexual relations with that woman was the big thing. And it was a scandal to think that the president of the United States could have an extramarital affair because of that picture. And like you move forward and now like you look in culture, you look in things like that. If a senator does it, like, and look at TV shows that kind of do this stuff too, then nobody really cares. You know what I mean? Like it's something that's just kind of been normalized. Like, I mean, where else do you see things being normalized when it comes to sex and culture?
Sex and culture. I don't know. That's a tough one. With like the whole sex and culture, I see other things are like almost getting normalized in our type of culture, like with I guess school shootings. It almost feels like it's being normalized as like the numbers keep going up for school shootings, and it's like it just happens. Like it's what our generation is growing up with.
It's just something that happened because I still remember Columbine. Like that was one of the first mass known ones at least. And like I remember how that rocked everybody's world, you know. There's just certain things that rocked our world, and this is really, I mean, what's I have my answer. What's the big turning point in history, in recent history? What's the big thing that kind of changed perspective on everything? The way we saw the world, the way we understood culture, the way we understood everything.
Social media.
No, like an event.
Oh, 9/11.
9/11. Yeah,
for
it changed
sure.
everything. I mean, I don't even think honestly I had really heard the word Muslim or Islam before 9/11 and stuff like that. And then after that point too, it was just challenging because it was the first time I think in a long time the world had to face evil in a very real way. Yeah. And like, so we had to kind of come to understand what that meant. And then all of a sudden just evil in normal society became just normal stuff. Actually, it's interesting. I wrote a paper in college. It's going to sound boring because I just said I wrote a paper, but it's not that.
It is boring.
And it was about.
No. It's boring.
Oh, you're hilarious. It was actually
Very
about
funny.
the Joker, right? So it was when the movie Dark Knight Rises came out, and Dark Knight, and you get the Joker. Heath Ledger's the Joker, which is a really good one. And it was about how actually, if you start looking at, and I was an English major, I was a nerd, but I really loved this paper. If you start looking at the way the Joker is depicted throughout history, you start to see kind of culture reflected in it. So you go back to the 1960s, you got Cesar Romero's Joker. He's a goofball. He works with other bad guys. They're all kind of together. It's the Cold War, you know what I mean? And that's how we kind of thought of bad people. Go to Jack Nicholson's 1989, and all of a sudden you have a mobster. We know his name. He's not just the Joker. And that's the thing is you had this mob mentality, gangsters and crime, those things. Then you go to Heath Ledger, and it's like terrifying because you don't know who he is. You don't know where it comes from. And it's just terror. It's just straight evil. And that's the thing is when you start to think about some of these things of mass shootings or terrorism or, again, even sex and stuff like that, you don't think of the words wicked anymore or evil. Like it's just normal.
It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I actually just wrote a paper on the Joker too for English class.
Oh, nice.
The new one that came out about the kind of the how mental disabilities and stuff like that.
That one was good. It was a really good movie.
I actually did not see that one yet.
You didn't see it? That one's
It's a really good movie.
It's easily one of the best Joker
movies. That would make
movies.
sense then.
Yeah.
I mean, is he a villain? Is he a bad guy? Or
yeah, well,
it's more
somewhat.
like the effects of society have on him, like his turning point, kind of.
Yeah.
it's
It's less action and more like in your
Spoiler
head.
like a
alerts if you haven't watched
it's like
the
a
movie.
biography of him type
Yeah.
deal. It's like
But he's
about his
still-
life,
but he's still the Joker. Like
how
he's still,
he became the
Yeah,
Joker.
it's like
How he
bef-
became.
before
Okay, so
and-
that's just a continuation of this conversation then, right? It's
Yeah.
because what is the evil of society today or what creates evil in the world? It's all mental illness and all this other stuff, right?
Mhm.
And so like or mental whatever we call it now, mental disorders, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Chat's kind of dead, guys. You still there? You with us? Any thoughts right now?
I know we kind of went off on a tangent.
Did you see what Lexi
maybe
and
not.
Caroline? I don't know if
Oh.
you saw it. Did you see what
No, I
Caroline?
didn't. My phone's probably just
Okay, I was say, did you see what Ty put?
No. I'm not seeing any of this actually.
Ty,
Well, so
man.
did you read the one about what Lexi put about how she feels a
My
generation?
phone apparently froze, so I didn't see any.
All right,
of
so
this.
Lexi wrote, I don't think it's a generational thing, and I think social media plays a huge role in that. Social media constantly shows us what we should look like and what is and isn't okay to the society.
Totally. And Lexi, tell us this then too, and I'm probably not gonna be able to see it because my comments are being weird. But like, whose social media? Like, is it your friends? Is it celebrities? What is it? You know what I mean?
It's almost like the influence as a whole, probably. Like
Yeah.
It's kind of mob mentality.
I think, yeah. Like, once one person does it, then everybody else wants to kind of do it.
Then it's cool.
Yeah.
Caroline also put in there. She said, "This is a generational difference, but it doesn't make it an okay thing or a good thing."
Yeah.
She said whenever they were watching the Super Bowl halftime, 20 other girls and like her were very uncomfortable of what was happening up there on the screen.
Oh, sure. Okay. Good. No. See, that's the thing then is it's not necessarily a generational thing. It's something, and it does make you uncomfortable. Like, I mean, I remember, okay, so I lived back in the day of the Janet Jackson scandal too. Y'all have heard of this one?
No.
Have you not heard of this?
I've never heard of it.
Maybe
Are you kidding me? Am I that old? Like, it was.
Yes, you're that old.
Boomer.
You are a boomer.
Y'all must have been babies. Y'all must have been absolute babies.
Back in my day.
Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson are doing the halftime of the Super Bowl, and it's epic. You know, these are two of the biggest names. So it's got to be like early 2000s. So it would be when y'all were babies. And all of a sudden, like at the very end, Justin Timberlake reaches over to Janet Jackson and then like reaches across her and comes away, and part of her top comes down. Right, and so it is very
I feel
much.
I've heard about this.
Yeah, and it was called a wardrobe malfunction, but it was one of the first things in culture that like pushed the envelope. So again, I'm pretty sure it was actually somebody look it up. That's got a.
That's your phone that's on the ground
now. But look it up. What year was that? Because it would almost be interesting if it was after 9/11. And now that I think about it, because the days of good, wholesome American everything is gone because our image of that was shattered. But it was a huge deal to have this wardrobe malfunction. And if you were watching it live, you're kind of like, did that just happen? And of course, afterward, back then, it wasn't like all digital.
Right.
It was the news people that eventually found a picture of what actually happened and things like that. And it was covered, but it was very scandalous, like super scandalous what happened. But yeah, mainstream media doing that kind of thing. So it wasn't the first Super Bowl that did that. Yeah.
Chelsea Bryce put something in here, but I can't seem to see it. My thing.
It says, I think it's a generational thing. Being allowed in movies has been increasingly more lenient throughout the years regarding sexual stuff being allowed in movies. Lexley agreed. Corey Eves, 2004. Yeah, so it was 2004 was the Justin Timberlake.
I was 2 years old.
I was a freshman. In high school. I agree with Chelsea. I think we were exposed too much at a very young age because of things we grew up with. Since we lie the first generation that grew up, we're like the first generation that grew up with it. Yeah, so it's fascinating. Well, and you're also one of the first generations to watch Netflix all the time too. And I'm kind of like, there's certain Netflix shows that I'm like, oh, these are popular, I'll watch them, and then I'm like, okay, I have to stop watching these because all this is sex, like all the time.
Right.
Like it gets a little out of control. I mean, so Netflix is doing it to you. Instagram is doing it to you in one way or another. Just social media. When you say social media, what all did you think of when you think of that? TikTok.
Yes.
All right. So talk about sex and TikToks. Sexualized
Well, it's
stuff.
bad because like there's like obviously like minors, like doing sexual things. But then there's adults on the app too, so it's like.
Wait, what do you mean? Okay, like is this like dances and stuff?
Yeah,
like
but
it's like
it's very sexualized dances.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so frustrating. Well, have y'all ever seen what was it? Sunshine, Little Miss Sunshine. Have you ever heard of that movie?
Again, you're too old for us.
That is not an old movie.
No, it is.
It was probably too old for you when it came out, honestly. And so I'm gonna ruin this movie for you, actually, because
probably will never see it.
They're going on a trip, and there's this little girl who ends up being a famous actress, I think. Like, anyway, she's a famous child actress at the time. This is 2010s. Like, this is not that old. And she goes, and there's some big trip for this daughter, and I think it's like a pageant. Like, you think it's gonna be a pageant, and this little 10-year-old gets up there and does like a dance that you would see at a strip club. And it's like horrifying, but it's exactly what you're talking about with TikTok. And this culture, all of a sudden, for this little girl, it's just what she sees and what she knows and what she's been exposed to.
Right.
But that's the reality. And it's, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, like 0 being like, I'm numb to it, 10 being like, no, I'm kind of worried about this. Where are you at?
On what exactly?
On like the fact that little kids, this is so normal to them, they'll do this. Brady Zipter joined in, that Roman joined in, Noah Martini. We're talking about the sexualization of culture in general, and we're talking about TikToks and the fact that there are little kids doing like sexual things on there because that's just what culture says is cool and normal. And we just asked the question, scale of 0, I'm numb to this, and 10, like I'm actually, this kind of really bothers me. Where you at?
5.
I think it just like flies right over our heads the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Like we're not thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
Abby McElroy's here. What's up?
Whenever I see it, like especially because I don't watch TikTok to see that. Like I watch TikTok to like look at funny things. Like,
Yeah.
It's more about an entertainment value for me. And so like whenever I see it, I'm just like swipe past it. I don't even like
sure.
give it the
Like, I mean, seriously, on a scale of 0, I'm numb to it, and 10, I'm bothered by it, though. Like, we got a 5. You didn't give us a number.
It's hard to put it in like a numbing way. And like to me, it just flies right over my head. Like I don't even think about it.
So 0.
Yeah, because
So I'd put a lower number. I'd put like
When
almost
you're at
3
a-
or 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd do probably the same.
Chelsea Bryce is in my boat. She's at an 11. Like, I'm for real, though. Like, how is this comfortable for these kids? How is this okay? Am I just
Dude,
like,
you were like on top of the microphone.
the microphone.
didn't
Swallow.
even have coffee today. If you give me one of those little mask ones, then that works or whatever.
Okay, we'll do it next
But
time.
yeah, so like this reality. But see, here's the thing though too. You get on things to laugh. I've been on TikTok a little bit. There are like,
You can get on TikTok.
yeah. Well, I created one whenever y'all told me to.
Oh, that's right.
So like when I have seen it, there's certain things to me that I'm like, why are we laughing about this? Like this.
Yeah.
It's
There's a lot of dark
this
humor
is very
for sure.
sexualized type stuff that we just laugh about and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
When did dark humor become like a thing though?
Dark
Well,
humor.
yeah,
I feel like it's been
Yeah.
a thing.
It's always been a thing.
Oh, yeah, but like probably the 70s, 80s. Again, once after World War II, after evil gets exposed in the world, I think the world just falls apart, and the
Yeah.
idea of goodness goes away a little bit in a lot of people's eyes. You know. So, is there update? I saw Chelsea's 11. Is anybody else commenting about anything?
Nope.
Nobody else has any numbers.
Yo, if y'all got any numbers, hit them out there.
Brady Zipter said, "I feel like Pastor Lee would secretly be TikTok famous."
Oh, he probably is TikTok famous.
He's
We
got
just have no
Sully,
idea.
so that's
Sully would be TikTok
Sully would
famous.
be
that's
famous.
10K right there. At
Sullivan
least.
has his own account.
Sully is the best dog in the world. I tell him every single day. So like, but this whole idea of the sexualization of culture and where you see it at TikTok. I mean, think about the funny ones, right?
Mhm.
So what are some of the funny ones I've seen? The catching feelings one,
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Which one?
and people think
I
it's
think I'm
funny.
catching feelings. Like
Oh,
whenever you see the guy's
yeah,
butter
yeah.
or whatever.
But all of a sudden, it's like, isn't that creepy? Saying that out loud
Exactly.
is weird.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Laugh track's not cool. But like, there's other ones like that too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I have a feeling there's probably even
I
more
don't
of
look,
that.
I don't
if
look
I've
thick,
seen
so I turn
something.
around check.
Oh, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn what that meant, and you taught me with my dog.
What is
Like,
thick?
that's very different.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He knows what thick is.
Sully is
So-
thick.
Oh.
Sully's thick.
So I could have to ask people, what does that mean? And they're like, it doesn't mean a good thing. I was like, oh, great, you know. But then, like, there was a time too when I don't think just social media a huge contributor is the culture. I've already been accused for hating women or being racist because I didn't like the halftime show. Interesting. Okay. Each generation has had their issues with how the younger dress. This is true, and dance and things like that.
Yeah,
That's what the
definitely.
movie Footloose is about, which is referenced in a
But
Marvel
the thing
movie.
is, it's Jayla. Jayla's like 50.
yeah,
like,
Yeah, that is weird.
So it's not really about our generation that's dressing like that. It's more us kind of judging
But not all 50-year-olds though
area.
are like
Yeah, and it,
are like that.
And it was interesting that like Caroline mentioned the accused of being racist too thing, because that's the other piece of the Latin culture is just very sexualized in general.
yeah.
And because I remember going to a New Year's party of a guy who was his whole family, and I was kind of like, "What is happening?" He's like, "Dude, we're just Latin, man. That's how it works." And it wasn't like like that's the thing is it was sexualized, but it wasn't sex, and so it was just kind of weird and not stuff I'm used to because my family doesn't even dance at weddings sometimes. Like so, it's just a different culture. I remember actually being scandalized when I went to school dances, like as a kid. That's how innocent I was. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Some of the stuff that happens at school dances, I'm like, yeah, you're like,
Grinding.
yeah, that's kind of like,
Grind train.
no, don't say the word train with it. That sounds even
But
worse.
it
It
sometimes
does,
is.
It does
Sometimes it gets into that.
happen. Middle of
gets
the
there.
circle do
Bad.
be heated.
And that doesn't bother anybody. Okay.
Nope.
That's definitely normalized.
Really?
Right over our heads.
Yeah. That's like a 6th grade thing.
That is different. All right. That Roman said also, if you think about it, not all TikToks are sexual like that. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no, totally.
Yeah.
No, we're just talking about how just sexualized in general. There's a lot of different stuff like
And
that.
I think a lot of it has to do with like what you're exposed to, like what your parents allow you to be exposed to. Because I know that there's not necessarily a lot of people that are like all the same, you know.
Oh, sure. Well, nobody's all the same.
Right.
Yeah,
But like for me, like when I was younger, it was like if I was at my mom's house, I was not allowed to watch anything. But if I was at my dad's house, it was like free game. You get to pretty much watch whatever you want.
Oh, sure.
So it was kind of one of
think
those
about
things.
it now, right? Kids are basically have free reign with their phones because that's a big issue, and parents want to have a lot of conversations about that and say like, how can I better monitor my child's use on the internet and phones and things like that? And even when you do that, you find ways around everything.
For sure.
So Caroline said, just because it's part of the culture doesn't mean it's good though, and she says she's with PL on something. So this thing though of, I mean, why do you think do you think it's culture in general? But it sounds like too the Generation Z or X or whatever, Generation Z,
Zoomers,
like Zoomers. Nice. Why do you think you're so anesthetized to the sex piece, particularly?
I think it's very prevalent, and like obviously it's been prevalent throughout history too. But like, I think since we're exposed to it a lot more than I'm sure more people have been. I don't know.
I think it's because there's less religion in the world type deal.
Really?
Like we're losing that whole like faith thing. But like, I guess how I'm trying to say this. So like the whole deal with sex premarital sex, like that whole idea has kind of been lost. Like it's like as a whole, like as an entire group, like it's kind of, we don't really feel like we need to get married first before it's like we can move on to as many as we want type deal.
Yeah, but I don't think that started with our generation. That definitely started a while ago.
No, yeah, for sure.
You look at the hippies, they're,
I feel like it's full.
They're going all around.
I feel like it was started in the generations just right above us, but like we were growing up with it always being like that.
Well, and it's interesting. I think you're true. In the 70s, this is a big deal. The free love, young love, things like that. But then like my generation actually started shifting things. The millennials like started kind of shifting in a direction, but they're also one of the ones that are more, again, without the morals, things like that. So it's interesting on the boundaries, but then also this other one too. Right. We have some different thoughts coming in right now. Mom will let my little brother get Snapchat because he thinks it's just gotten so much worse since I got one. She's gotten a lot more strict with him because it's hard to monitor what he can and can't see. And I would say, like, honestly, I didn't get Snapchat when it first came out because
I don't have Snapchat.
You don't have, good for you. Yeah. I have it, but I don't use it. My Snap score is like something stupid low. But like, because 200. I remember when it first came out, like I asked people what it's about and they said it's so people can send naked pictures to each other back and forth. And I was like, oh, I don't need that. So I'm not going to get that. Right. You know what I mean? And then Chelsea said, in my opinion, over monitoring your kids just makes them more sneaky and less open to share with the parents. I'm going to say I'm on it. I don't know that I'm fully there. I'll put it that way. Because I think there's a level of accountability as long as your parents know. And you can say, hey, I'm doing this to keep you accountable if you know that I'm watching. I think kids that are going to be sneaky are going to be sneaky regardless.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree with that.
I think if you feel like you can't share with your parents, you don't share with your parents. And that's kind of how it goes. But I can see exactly what you're saying, though, too, of they're just going to find a way. And I've had plenty of conversations
well,
with kids about that.
If your parents give you the freedom to do things, you should at least have the respect to not necessarily do the wrong thing all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you should have that respect for them if they're giving you that free will to do whatever you want.
That freedom.
Yeah.
Agree to hear exposed to things either way, just because that's how middle schoolers are. Every generation's had this. Yeah, Elvis, when Elvis shook his hips, that was super scandalous.
Of course, she brings in Elvis.
50s, 60s.
Boomer.
Austin, I feel like when TikTok and other media platforms allow kids to make over-sexualized videos, it sends a message to others that it's okay. All right. Yeah, I see that. Caroline says, I agree with Clayton. Christianity has a big influence even on non-religious people because it provided a sense of morality. As God has been taken out of culture, we don't share those morals anymore. And I think that's where we were going with
morals.
The moral, yeah. As much as you normalized evil and things that we used to be able to use words like wicked with and things like that, then all of a sudden we lose the moral side. Here's an interesting point, what the pastor thinks. I think we did this in the church. I think we started losing it in the church. Because I think at some point we said what God's word says is too mean. It sounds too bad. You know what I mean? And so we said, let's make it sound nicer than it is. And this whole idea, like we just covered with our confirmation students, the idea of like cheap grace, of how we do things. We can hear you whispering.
Yeah, we know.
So over there.
But this whole idea is like, I think we started doing it to ourselves by trying to make things sound And again, there's a reason, right? Because there's this thing called grace, and we want people to know about this thing called grace. But we felt like at some point, in order to make grace stand out, we had to make the law go away.
Yeah.
And so even I've like, we don't talk about how the law convicts us or how God's way or plan for us, like to not do good things. We talk more about like, oh, but God forgives you. And if you know God forgives you, what do?
You just do it anyways. There's like no second thought.
What's the point if you have forgiveness?
Exactly.
Corey said, agreed, Caroline, and self-respect has been lost. Oh, that's an interesting point.
We feel like there's no consequences.
Yeah.
Consequences for your actions.
That's a good one. That goes to the parent stuff too.
Man over here always saying it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for
permission.
Sure. I mean, and I think where do those non-consequences and stuff come in too? It comes in the parents, and the parents, like, and that was the interesting. You talk about generations and boomers. Okay, so Okay, let's do the generational lesson again. What generation were the parents of the boomers?
Your generation.
No,
that's the greatest generation.
Oh, the greatest generation. That was with the war, right?
AKA people that fought in the war. So they come home and things were bad. In their childhood, they had the Depression, right?
The Dust Bowl, the Depression.
That's what they lived through, and then they fought in the war. So they saw poverty, they saw war, and so what did they want for their kids?
Happiness.
That's all they wanted. So they'll do anything. They'll give them anything. Economy is great, so they bought them anything, and that's the boomers. So the boomers is, well, this is what I got. So what did they say?
Do it for our kids.
We got to do it for our kids. Okay, so they did it for the millennials, and now what we're seeing too with the Xers and all this thing is we need. That's the goal, is to make our kids happy, and that's the goal, is to give them whatever they want and whatever they need. And so this level of, well, I can do whatever I want and there's no consequence. It all follows suit with this stuff when y'all mentioned boomers.
Boomer.
Will is still joined back in. Hello, Will.
What do you think, Jeremy?
On which part?
All of it.
Yeah. What do you think?
That's a big topic to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
For sure, to wrap it up in little.
For those that have been joining, we've been talking about the the hyper-sexualization of culture. So how sex has just kind of been normalized, and especially we talked about Super Bowl and that kind of thing, why it was kind of controversial, and yet there was kind of a different piece to it as well. Of people were kind of accepting of it. We had social media in the conversation and everything like that.
What are you thinking?
Word.
Word.
Stop that.
We got a comment from Roman Childress. I feel like, to add on to what you're saying, like, if the parents who have controls on the child's electronics, the kids will find any way around it. You know? So
that's true.
You got different things going on there. I mean, well, what do you think about that?
What was that? What you got?
You were going to say something.
I'm trying to think of like how we used to do it too, though, right? Because we didn't have so many ways to get away with things, but we could still get away with things. Like you didn't. You know what I mean?
Not the same ways that we have. Each generation is going to have their own way of getting around things.
Yeah.
Ours just so happens to be technology. That's why people put down the whole technology thing. They're saying technology is bad, and that's what that whole generation says.
Well, especially since our generation seems to be very tech savvy, we're able to just outsmart a lot of older generations because we were kind of raised with that, and they had to learn that. We just kind of already knew it.
Sure. Austin said, when TV starts to make fun of religion and promote sexual activity and violence, and that's when morality started to get away and the normalization of sex started. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like when you start to get rid of morals, like life's more fun without morals and things like that.
But when would you say that happened, though?
Like, again, I think World War II changed everything at that point. Yeah, before then, like, and that's when you have television kind of happening and things like that. And then you graduate into the 70s, the civil rights movement, and it's kind of, you start to see the evils of this world of how we've treated people. And so it's all of a sudden of, okay, you say you're moral, you say you're good, but this is how this world is kind of taking it. And so then all of a sudden, whenever evil kind of wins, you get other things being brought in, like and normalized, and saying, actually, well, that's why the whole like Star Wars thing, like a couple of my buddies, nerds, pastors, we're talking about
Geeks.
how like things like aren't the Jedi actually the bad guys, you know? Because
the whole debate about whether the dark side's actually good or if the Jedi order or whatever is bad.
Yeah, because like they're in control of things. Look
the government.
Yeah, look what happened when they were in charge and they tried to kill people and blah 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 blah. It's the same exact thing we're talking about right now. Like, what if the good guys? What if the church is the bad? I mean, how often have you heard that narrative?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, actually being bad's good. I mean, it's like you can go back to, the garden. Like, and the snake goes up to Eve.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not really true. Well, he's actually doing that just because he's the bad guy. You know, it goes all the way back there.
So, do you think morals is what is causing a lot of the problems?
I think there's a definitely a deterioration of morals in the country. I think it's just the presence of evil and the prevalence even of evil, like just how dominant it is. Sammy said, I think it's sad that everyone thinks sex is normal and casual before marriage. It's hard when you have friends that make it normal too, but you're still trying to stay pure. Chelsea said, probably the best thing you can do as a parent is to talk to your kids about what's okay and not okay to post on social media. Definitely agree with you there, Chelsea.
Communication.
I don't think we met yet, Chelsea, but I totally agree with that. Well, it's just the idea of being open and talking to your kids. Well, it's funny because when certain topics get brought up, it's like some people are kind of terrified to... Some people are kind of terrified to talk to their kids about certain things, and can I really do that? And it's like, no, you have to. Like that's why God put people in your world and gave you kids to take care of, is to be able to talk about these things as they come up, not to freak out about them. Because like, think about it. As soon as someone freaks out at you when you talk about something, do you ever want to talk to them about that again? No, not at all. Caroline, there are no morals without God. So when God is taken out, it's only a matter of time before morals are gone too. Totally a thing too. Because if there is no accountability, then it would. I mean, we've talked about this in youth group before. If there's no God, then like no one has any value whatsoever, and things like that. And that's a big question, right?
Well, how do you reach out to somebody that doesn't believe in God then about their morals?
Well, and that's so like I think. Well, it's interesting because God tells us the law is written on our hearts. So there's something inside of each and every one of us that knows what's right and what's wrong, like deep down, you know. And I'm sure over time that degrades and things like that, but somewhere deep down, you know, killing a person is not okay, and somewhere deep down, you know, hurting people or things like that or different things are just not okay, and you it's just in nature. But then just existence of God is always an interesting thing too, because like I always like to go to creation in general, because like the question of origin is actually kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And so like if you don't believe in God, then where did we all come from? What happened? Well, it was all chance. It's all a pool. Okay, where'd the pool come from? See, like that's the thing is I used to say like atheism doesn't make sense to me. Like, you know, I'll probably tell this to atheists when they tell me. Agnosticism, I think, is honest. You know, I can acknowledge that there's something bigger than all of this, but atheism to me doesn't make any sense, because how can you look at this world and think it's all chance or something like that? Because again, something had to start somewhere, you know? So just start there, but then it comes to morals and stuff like that, then it's kind of interesting. So Mindy just joined in. She said, hey, Mindy, Jeremy's here. We're talking about the sexy time. Is how Lexi just summarized what we're doing. We're talking about the sexualization of culture.
We're about wrapping up too.
She said, "Oh yeah, probably wrapping up our conversation." And so we talked about a lot about sex. Does anybody have any closing questions for us as we kind of think about where we've been and talked about these things? I think there are the interesting questions of what do we do? I think that's what Caroline and Austin were kind of getting at. Sammy was getting there too. How do we live in this world? I mean, because that's the thing is we live in the world and we interact with the world and we have this thing. And so Mama Keel just joined in. Hello, you're coming in on the tail end of everything, Mama Keel. And so what do we do? And I think it's a matter of interacting with it. I don't think it's a matter of hiding from it or running from it. I don't think it's a matter of giving into it. I mean, what are you guys thinking when you're sitting in it? You're knee deep in it compared to me. Yeah. In this safe place.
There's no way you avoid it.
Yeah.
It's the plain as day. It's everywhere. You're not gonna be able to avoid it.
Yeah. But you gotta kind of stay strong through it, because it's just one of those things you kind of have to put a mental block on a lot of this stuff.
And what does stay strong look like for you guys?
You gotta stay connected and keep your friends to keep you reliable. You need accountability, definitely, for sure. In it,
for sure,
doesn't have to be a friend. Can just be someone who you feel comfortable talking to, but you need accountability.
And I think that's a key point, is talking to somebody. Like I talk to people, again, in confirmation right now, they're doing confession, absolution type stuff. And I think it's just God puts us in a community sometimes just to be able to talk about whatever crap we're carrying, you know, because the idea of keeping it to yourself is going to chew you alive. It's going to eat you out alive. My question is, how can you get someone back on the right track? You can tell they've lost their morals and don't know how to help them back. And ultimately, too, that's an issue. I mean, how would you guys respond to that?
First, how to get somebody back when they've lost their morals?
Gone off the rocker.
Yeah.
I mean,
Communication for sure. You just gotta start talking to them about it first. Your first thing is to confront the problem. It may sound funny, but they gotta know that something's up too. It can't just be like a one-way street where you see something's wrong, because they'll never listen to you.
And it's gotta be one of those things where it's like personalized. Like you can't just talk to them just like in a crowd of people or something. You gotta have that like individual time for just you and them, just talking about it, making sure they all are on the right path of what you want to see from that person or whatever, but also to show them how they've changed when they've lost their morals. So it's not necessarily one of those things where it's just that person thinking that, oh, you're different.
Sure.
You have examples that show that something's changed, and if you go back, then it might be different.
Yeah. And Lexi kind of clarified, saying without offending them too, because that's the big concern, is like, I'm afraid I'm going to offend them and things like that. Caroline added in, especially for those of us who go to school with so many people who don't hold the same Christian morals. And I would say that's pretty much every high school, no matter where you go to school, there's a lot of that. The best way to fix it is to keep the conversation open and honest, knowing that you disagree. Sammy said, yeah, I agree. It's hard to talk about them, but you're scared to scare them away, right? Yeah. And that's ultimately, I think Scripture is great. I like the Bible. I think I've said that before. And I think Paul kind of says to those who are in the church, like, you have complete permission to have that conversation because you're brothers and sisters. That's how it works. But for people outside of it, then how can you truly help them to see it? And I think it is just an open relationship about it, and being honest. Just having conversations and having a relationship with them because you have a relationship with them. Everyone has a different set of morals. How do we know which version is correct? A different version of morals. So again, I am convicted that the Bible is an accurate account of history, and so that's where I kind of garner where I believe morals are at. Morals actually, I would say, are actually pretty common when you really think of the word morals. I think you could say there's a difference between people's morality, because there's good morals and bad morals, or morals and then not morals, maybe is probably another way you would say it. But I would say for the most part, if you think of what is moral, people would understand what that means. And sometimes they bend that a little bit too. Mm-hmm. But I think overall, like, for people who are outside of your faith and who share different morals than you, you don't give in to their morals. You don't participate in things that go against your morals. You stand on your morals, but you have an honest relationship with people.
Right. For sure.
And even when you talk to people, you don't necessarily have to step on their toes and try and convince them that our way is right, whatever. If that's what they believe about themselves and stuff like that, it's not necessarily your job to fix them,
Yeah. And I think there's that level of remembering, it's a person, not a project. Like, you're not trying to fix them. You're not trying to tell them that you're right. You're trying to say, this is what I understand to be the truth. And really and truly, when you speak the truth speaks for itself. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Clayton's getting anxious, telling us that it's time to go. He's getting up in his seat and squirming around and things like that. So, guys, it's been awesome. It's been fun. Definitely DM us any conversations, or talk to Clayton, talk to Aiden, talk to Jeremy, even. Talk to anybody on what you want to talk about, things like that, coming through. And Corey, I think that's a good thing to end on too, is just be real. Be honest with who you are. Don't be fake. Don't pretend to be somebody that you're not when it comes to these conversations. And I want to say good luck, but I guess I'll say God be with you as you go into the battle with all of this stuff in your lives. You know what I mean? And ask the right questions to the right people. I think that's the other thing. And be in community.
Yep, for sure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for watching. If you have any questions, any recommendations for topics that we can do in the future, if you want to be on the podcast / live stream, hit us up, and we can make things work. Just help us get better, and we hope to make it enjoyable.
Cool. Sure. Are you going to go end it over there?
I'm going to end it on right here.